Hello everyone, I'm Bonita from Pennies to Dollars and welcome to my channel. I'm a Kansas farm girl that was raised by Depression era parents. So they raised me very frugally. And so I share some of those memories and ways that I live that are similar that I have brought with me into my adulthood so that I can save money. And I share those with you hoping that maybe some of those will give you some ideas of things that you can try. Now, today we are going to imagine being frugal. I'm going to take you back into my memory banks of the way that I was raised. And we're going to talk about a few things that might spark some ideas right here and now. So, when I grew up, we had the same plastic covered furniture my entire life. And I'm talking from the time I was little until I was 44 years old when my dad passed away. So we never had different furniture. It was always the same. My naps were taken on the same couch. I laid there and looked at the same green plastic button while I was made to take a nap for my whole childhood. And when I grew up, it was the same chairs. Now, granted, back in that time, things were made better. They didn't seem to fall apart as much. But for my parents' entire life and marriage, they had the same furniture. My dad never bought my mom flowers their entire marriage. Now, you may say, oh my gosh, that's terrible. But dad told me it meant more if he picked them himself. So he would pick flowers and take them to mom, but he didn't buy any. And that was kind of the philosophy as I grew up. Doing things yourself meant more than buying something for someone. And we carried this into birthdays, we carried this into Christmas. This was the way that we did things. And I know some people still do that. My daughter's mother-in-law will make the grandchildren gifts. She'll make them little rugs, she'll make them little blankets. She makes them all kinds of things for gifts. And that's something they can keep forever. That's something that they will always remember that grandma made for them. There was no eating out growing up. We lived about an hour from the nearest city. And I don't even know what would have been offered back then because that wasn't something that we really ever thought about. I know there was McDonald's, but it just wasn't something that we did. And nowadays, we have to also be careful about that here. Kansas is a taxed food state. Now, they dropped our taxes on food that is not ready to eat to 5% at the beginning of the year when it had been 7.5%. And if you were in a city that charged a tax, it might be 8.5%. But now it's only 5%, but that's on things that you buy and you cook. If you eat out or if you buy ready prepared foods, they are still the 7.5 to 8.5% to buy those ready to eat foods. So they still encourage us to cook at home. We never bought pre-made items growing up. My mom started her first job when I was in junior high. She worked at nights at a foundry, and mom would buy some easy things that I could make on my own during the day while she was sleeping in the summer. We would get Totino's pizzas, and back then they were 59 cents. Yes, 59 cents for a Totino's pizza back when I grew up. And she would buy Great Northern beans that were 4 for $1 in the can. Now, I grew up eating those on bread. I would make them, put them on bread, and eat them. And a lot of people may say that sounds terrible, but in the UK, they still eat beans on bread. Now, sometimes they eat baked beans on bread and other types of beans on bread. I only grew up with the Great Northern beans on bread. And I guess maybe that was a substitute for cornbread. We never really had cornbread with our beans. Sometimes we would have cornbread with syrup on top and we would eat it like cornmeal mush or like a pancake, but we never had it just as cornbread. So I grew up eating that, and that was my main two things that I would make in the summer when mom was sleeping during the day. And I never got tired of them, and I still eat Great Northern beans on bread. things were homemade, like I touched on before. This stand behind me, if you can see it, it is 3-tiered. And my oldest brother, who has passed away now, he made this for me in high school shop class. And he moved out when I was only 4 years old because he was 14 and a half years older than I was. So I've had this my entire life, and it's something that he made for me. So as you can see, things that were given, that were made for you, were very precious. And people kept those things because they were so precious. His wife would also make me things. They didn't have a lot of money. They were a young couple starting out. And the picture of the little milk crate house that is in my video thumbnail, she made me that. And she put little pieces of carpet or cloth and recycled those to make them look like carpet in my milk crate. She made little pieces of furniture that have since fallen apart because I'm almost 58. But she made little mirrors that would stick to the wall. She made it absolutely a child's paradise for somebody growing up in the early 70s and late 60s. And I loved this dollhouse. I played with it so much. And my middle daughter requested that she have it for her kids because my kids also played with it growing up and they know how special it was. So my middle daughter now has it for my grandchildren. My sister-in-law taught me how to embroidery, and she had spent so much time with patience teaching me as I would get the strings knotted, as I would get my needle in a situation and she'd have to unknot my thread time and time again. And I was probably 7 or 8 when she spent hours and hours upon end, day after day, teaching me how to embroidery. And as I got older, I bought pillow slips one year for everyone for Christmas, just plain white pillow slips. And I embroidered everyone's name on every single pillow slip. And that was their gift that year. My sister-in-law was so creative. She could take nothing and make something out of it. She could take discarded things and make things out of them. One year, she took an old cardboard notebook that just had 2 pockets in it. She covered it with an old pair of corduroy jeans so that I had a pocket in the front for my pens and pencils. And on the inside, she made me stencils of different types of pictures that I could use to embroidery on typing paper. It was an amazing gift. Another year, she took an old skirt, one of those old polyester skirts that she'd long outgrown, and it had elastic still around the top, and she put straps on it that were a different color, and she embroidered me a huge picture of Big Bird from Sesame Street. And I wore that faithfully all the time in the summer until I outgrew it. So as you can see, those homemade things, they mean so much. And not everyone is creative like that. Not everyone has imagination like that. I know that I struggle in that area, but I also know that those gifts to me were the most special. And I only got rid of that Big Bird shirt about a summer or so back because something had gotten on it in one of the buildings where I was storing it. It had leaked, it had stained it, and I couldn't save it. But that's how special that was to me, that I kept it that long. And I think I still have that corduroy purple notebook that she made me with the stencils in it. And of course, I still have this. And we never ever hauled our limbs to the junk pile. We always saved our limbs even so that we could have the next family weenie roast together. Every time there was any kind of limb pile, we would get excited because that meant family gathering and weenie roast. So I hope you've enjoyed this little look back into some of my childhood memories of growing up with a frugal family. And I hope they've inspired you to look beyond purchasing things for Christmas if you have the creativity to make something that will mean more. I hope you have a great day.